Here we go, 89, back with you. Steve Smith Sr., James Palmer with you, and we have a lot of rookies we're going to get to. That's that time of year. Steve says hello. I say hello. But we're going to stick with some vets first for this one. Yes, you've been clamoring for the rookie breakdown, Steve. Everybody wants them. They're coming. But we're going to talk about some of these free agents that either changed locations or stayed. Steve, let's start at the top. Davante Adams.
The Los Angeles Rams gets a 2-year commitment that says he's going to be there for a little bit of time. Now, I know back yonder, back in 2024, someone said that Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp could not coexist. And people were coming at me that I'm a moron, correct? I'm an idiot, possibly. And I just don't know what I'm talking about. Incorrecto. I knew exactly what I was talking about in regards of understanding this offense by the Los Angeles Rams. Understanding that there is only one dog that can eat in this offense. I'm telling you, Davante Adams is a dog. However, he is not going to be the focal point. You can see that what Cooper Kupp was experiencing, he was getting phased out, not because he can't play, because this offense, the way Sean McVay runs this offense, it makes it impossible for two guys to eat healthy. Somebody's gonna eat organic and somebody's gonna eat junk food. And I'm telling you, and eventually, the person with the junk food, he goes to the dentist, they start checking his teeth and understand he got a root canal, he got cavities, gingivitis, and guess what? You got to go. And that's what happened.
At the point he is in his career, at 32 years old.
That's not old now.
It's not. But I think where he's at, I'm talking about mindset and what went on with going to the Raiders, not working out, going to the Jets, not working out, getting a chance to go back to the West Coast like he wanted, to go to a contender like he wanted, and have a chance to win a Super Bowl. I'm curious if he's okay with the situation, because I think he might be, with all of that said, because he knows where he's at in his career. And I will say this, he can still play. Like, yes, I asked around, and there's a reason why he went as quickly as he did, Steve, right? Among all the wide receivers that are over 30 that are available, it was Davante, and we're just crickets, right? And that's because he can still play. And there's a reason that was brought up to me by a wide receiver coach, and I want your take on this. And I thought it was a great point, and it's similar to some things you've told me in the past. Because of how Davante has always won, and that means in his matchups, in one-on-one or in routes or whatever, it's been because of his route running. It's been because of how savvy he is and how smart he is.
Yes.
Those things, as you get older, are still there. He was never a pure speed guy that he won that way. So his game translating at the age of 32 translates better than maybe some other receivers that strictly won by physical ability or won by speed. And is that an accurate assessment of why he still has value because of the way he's always played? And those things you've always told me age a little bit better than the other things.
It's exactly why Davante Adams became such a high priority at the age of 32. Because when you look at Davante Adams and you ask yourself, what does he bring to the table? When you add the age part and lack of explosiveness, especially when we are looking at a couple of days, weeks after the combine, that everybody talks about 40 times, right? Guys move up and move down based on their 40 times. I believe it just happened last year, but I digressed. Davante Adams has done a really good job. And when you say, what does he do well? His releases are phenomenal.
Okay, I love
the
that.
way he can just create, every receiver is known for something. Davante Adams is known for his releases. And the way he releases, the way he gets himself and creates free access, it's such a thing you can't teach. So you want to get a guy, especially with Puka Nacua being the number one guy, you want to get that guy around someone else now that Cooper Kupp will be released, that he can get some more tools in his tool belt to allow him to really become that dynamic football player that he's already becoming. But now you have someone that can teach you. You can either physically teach you or you can be taught by observation, but you're gonna watch it and you're gonna take some notes. You're gonna steal some reps and some opportunities because Davante Adams is one of the best route runners, release guys in the National Football League at 30 plus years old.
Yeah. There was two other aspects about this move that I wanted to ask you about. I see some similarities between Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers to where Stafford's going to give him chances, right? He's going to throw it up to him the way Aaron did and give him those opportunities on the outside. And I think that adds to this fit working. The other part is in the red zone, Steve. Like if you remember last year, I mean, A-Rod was just feeding him in the red zone. I mean, part of the reason why Garrett Wilson was maybe a little upset. But if you have a red zone defense and scoring 7 in the tight red too, like you have to at least keep an eye on Davante, which makes the defense have to account for one other thing on the outside as well as what they got to do with Puka and what they got to do with him. I think it changes just what defenses do.
You know the Los Angeles Rams, Sean McVay, they're going to run the football. So then while they're running the football as well as they like to do, now that adds another level of concern for the defensive coordinator because Davante Adams has the ability to create so much free access so quickly that all of a sudden you got a RPO game and a little dump off. Sean McVay does a great job of attacking the defense. And then now you add Davante Adams with his ability to escape and maneuver through different press coverages. Now all of a sudden, creativity from the play caller, creativity from the savvy vet, and then running the football. All of a sudden, you got to pick your poison. You got to decide, what are we going to commit to taking away? Is it the pass game or the run game? And Sean McVay has been one of the guys, no matter who's at the quarterback, no matter who's playing or not playing, who's available and who's not available, he creates mismatches with everyone on that roster. Tutu Atwell at times. He wasn't the dynamic player. However, he made dynamic plays. Tyler Higbee. He wasn't dynamic because he messed up his knee, wasn't there, but goodness gracious, he comes back, he falls right back in line, just gets right back on the horse, and he's just full steam ahead. You know, obviously I think the biggest issue for the Los Angeles Rams isn't necessarily restocking on offense. They got to figure out what they're going to do at defense. Their secondary, they're constantly losing some of their depth at the defensive line. So I'm interested to see how they could get better in the secondary because that was their Achilles heel at the wrong time throughout the season.
Man, I will say this, Les Snead knows how to draft in those middle rounds. I mean, they have a pretty good track record for hitting, so we'll see what happens after the draft. I like that you mentioned Tutu Atwell, by the way. He gets 1 year, $10 million. To me, that shows the way Sean McVay values the element he brings to this offense as well in terms of getting defenses stretched vertically, horizontally, every blade of grass to let all of this work, or else you don't give Tutu probably that contract. Right. And the last question I have for you, Steve, is this then. With everything we're talking about, is this the biggest threat to the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC? I guess you could say the Lions are there too still. But do they put themselves in that top tier now that they have Davante included to this young defense and Stafford's back, and they're probably the team that played Philly the best than anybody did in the second half of the season?
If they can get better on the back end, you know, the front seven, obviously, you know, a front seven can fix everything, but a front seven can fix a few things, but it can't fix everything. And at times they lacked that shutdown corner or a guy who can actually come up with consistency in slowing down some of these wide receivers that are in the NFC. You look at the Buffalo Bills game, that was a high-scoring game. You just don't anticipate being able to play that type of football and consider that to be championship football as well.
Makes sense. DK Metcalf, Steve, big trade.
I did not see that move appearing on the ticker.
I heard some rumblings that
I heard
maybe
some
everybody
rumblings
wasn't
too,
happy.
but I
Yeah.
didn't think it was Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Oh no, I didn't think it was going to be Pittsburgh. We'll run through this. They end up getting a second-round pick in return. The Seattle Seahawks get. They send DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He signs that massive 4-year, $132 million extension. Wowzers. They wanted a 1 and a 3. I think it was reported. I made several calls on that. I had somebody actually laugh, Steve, real quick, like a GM go, a first.
He signs a extension after getting traded, $132 million extension. That's a lot of cheddar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at that. Is there someone up for negotiations currently right now or in his 5th-year option?
Well, there's a couple guys.
Well, that's at wide receiver.
I'm thinking of 2. I'm thinking that this
George Pickens.
drives, yes.
I have not spoken to anyone. Not a lot of people is trying to talk to me on cell phone right now. So
I'll always talk to you.
I would humbly guesstimate George Pickens may be on his way out. You can't have $200 and something million wide receivers on the same team. They don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Well, talk to Cincinnati. They're going to try to make it happen.
Yeah,
which this deal complicates things.
You can try all you
honestly.
want, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a possibility, especially with some of the things that has transpired with George Pickens. I don't see them giving George Pickens that money, and I also don't know if George Pickens can handle not getting that money when they just gave his bag to DK Metcalf.
Yeah, I know this, and I think you know a lot of the things that I know. I'll put it politely and say this. It was a very difficult year in Pittsburgh for all parties involved.
That's cold. That's cold for that might be cold for. Bye, Felicia.
So I do think this is something worth monitoring. I think there is, and this could be dated at some point. I think there is a thought, let's try to have this work for 1 year. And we bring, and we have them both. But I don't see them extending George Pickens with the money that they spent on DK Metcalf. Does that happen then after this year? We'll see. I want to talk about the contract first for a second, Steve, and DK as a player. I think you talked to enough people around the league. The offense just wasn't good a season ago in Seattle. They move on from their offensive coordinator. That was a big part of it. Geno was sacked 50 times. Offensive line had their issues. A disconnect between the run and the pass. There were large stretches where you didn't really see DK making an impact. I'm curious your take on whether that was the offense. And you see DK having a larger, more consistent role in Pittsburgh with a guy like Arthur Smith. Some people said that by the way, that he's going to use DK the same way he used A.J. Brown when Arthur Smith and A.J. Brown were together in Tennessee. I don't compare A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf to be the same type of receiver at all.
They're different receivers. They run a different route tree. DK Metcalf, route tree, hitch, fade, post, comeback. He's more on the outside.
Yep.
AJ gives you a little bit more on the route tree. He can stop and go a little bit more fluidly. DK has worked on his game. He is a really good route runner. The thing I would say, I don't necessarily put him in the category of is polished. The way he plays the game is a little bit different than some of the other guys. And I think Arthur Smith understands that. They need a deep threat guy. They need a guy that can get down the field and go, press and stretch the third level. But if you're looking for DK to run every single route, that's just not who he is. And who's playing quarterback, right? And depends on who's playing quarterback too, because if Moonball is back, that's Russell Wilson, then you can say that works out. But then also that would also tell me that the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at retooling offensive line, retooling the running back, creating a more consistent two-headed monster. Right? They tried to have a two-headed monster, but I would say Warren at times took Najee Harris's job, and then Najee Harris did a really good job of being a high hand at times, but I think it was a little bit of inconsistency. So we'll really see how the Pittsburgh Steelers shape up. I like the move. I would tell you I'm surprised that DK Metcalf is traded for a second pick.
Second round pick.
And
yep.
Deebo is traded for a fifth round pick. I
like that makes you scratch your head. Before we get to Deebo, though, I want to say one thing. This is actually less compensation the Steelers give up than what they were willing to do at the beginning of the season. They were going to give up more than this second-round pick, Steve, for Brandon Ayuk. If you remember at the beginning of the season when they were trying to lure him from San Francisco before he signed his deal and he was going to come to Pittsburgh and he was going to get a new deal, they actually had more on the table for Ayuk than they did end up giving for DK. And remember, they wanted to make a trade for Christian Kirk in the middle of the season. That didn't happen, so it shows you their desperation for adding in the receiver position, and they finally landed in DK. The part that makes me laugh is everybody goes, well, you got DK on one side and you got George Pickens on the other, and you're not going to play him in man. You're going to have to play too high. They're both so dominant. That's going to stretch it, and then you're going to be able to run the ball like crazy. I'm like, you did not pay DK $33 million a year to be your decoy down the field while you continuously run the football. But that's neither here nor there. You mentioned Deebo, Steve. Deebo Samuel goes to the Commanders, brought in by his former, I believe he was assistant general manager at the time, Adam Peters, who was part of drafting Deebo Samuel at the San Francisco 49ers. They get him for a fifth-round pick. They do take on that salary, which is one of the things, as we've seen, just the purge going on with the San Francisco 49ers. Man, if I'm a real estate agent connected to the 49ers right now, I'm happier than shit. I mean, there's like 92 guys leaving the team, and you're just going to be selling houses like crazy. Like 12 guys leave the team, and they're all high-priced talent, so they got some, commission might be good. But Deebo Samuel, I think this actually, there weren't as many suitors. I'll put this before you tell me about the fit in Washington. There were not as many suitors as people thought. Houston wasn't really.
Why?
I don't know. The teams I talked to that people said they were interested, I mean, Houston wasn't very all that interested.
I know why.
Tell me why.
He's a playmaker. He's not a route runner. And it's going to be interesting to see what the Commanders do as well, either in the draft. They got to get some speed. Deebo is going to be used in between the hashes in the slot. You have Scary Terry outside, but they need a speed guy. And I'm not talking about somebody where a fan believes, oh, he's fast because he's faster than me that sit on the couch. I'm talking about a real speed guy, a guy that can really push the pedal to the metal, who can run a 4.3, not a game speed 4.5. I'm talking about a real 4.3, and maybe when his adrenaline's going and he has a football in his hand, he can maybe dip down to the 4.29.
But 23 miles an hour here. Let's go.
Yeah, so we're talking about some good game speed, and I just see Deebo adding to this offense to give this offense, the Commanders, more guys that their young quarterback can continue to pick apart this defense, because I believe this move says the Commanders take on the final year. Mm-hmm. That means he has one more year left, right?
Actually a rental right now, yeah.
The final year. So that tells me this team believes that the plan they have for free agency and draft, that this is a player that can help them get to the next level, because they were a game away, 2 games away. They were a play away, 2 plays away, and they believe getting Deebo gets them one less player, one less play that they have to concern themselves with. And so this is a team that's saying with their moves, he's worth this 1 year because it could get us where we want to go. We're hot right now. We're not in a rebuilding stage. We in a we gonna make it stage.
Yeah. Yeah, we're right there. And I always look at connections with these things, right? Like, we always talk about a guy going and playing with who was part of bringing him in or his former coach. And I do understand that to an extent, because if Adam Peters is watching his film, it's far different than somebody that wasn't part of drafting him watching his film going, I remember seeing this, this, and this. He still can do this, this, and this that I saw the first time.
But
what
I can tell you,
can see.
But I can tell you Kliff Kingsbury is sitting there as well, going, hey, if we had this guy,
Of
when we
course.
do our RPO, and what was his name? Zacchaeus?
Yeah.
Salamade?
Yeah, Zacchaeus. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
he was used kind of like a Deebo.
Yeah.
Yep, at times where he was crafty behind the defense, doing little different things. And so I believe that they feel like it's an upgrade, or this is an added piece, a missing piece that they need to help them take it over the top.
Yeah. You mentioned the word playmaker, Steve, and I think that's accurate in what he is. But a lot of times people would say, well, if they're a playmaker, they work in every type of system. I don't think that's accurate with Deebo. I think this is strictly a fit type of thing, to where if you look at the way Washington plays offensively, they spread you out wide and they want you wide. What does that do for Deebo in the screen game and in the middle of the field game, and then that space, right, to where they throw a lot of that quick screen game and that wide screen game too that Jaden Daniels does. It's got to be the fit that probably limited some of the suitors, contract probably as well. But also, I think you're right. This is, in my opinion, and it's an educated one, not their only solution for weapons. Like everybody said, they need a complement to Terry. I don't think this is like we got Deebo and we're done. Like that's not.
This is add depth to your wide receivers room with a different look. This tells me that they have some people in free agency or in the draft that they believe that can help them. And so with Deebo, that puts him in a good position.
Interesting. Yeah. And hey, if he plays this 1 year, dominates and walks, they probably get a pick higher than the 5th they gave up in the next compensatory pick.
Really?
Well, if he plays this 1 year and he absolutely balls out and he signs a free agent deal.
So let me ask you, what's balling?
I don't know
what's balling out.
Well, I think obviously they'd like him to play like the All-Pro he was several years ago. But
no,
he
I'm saying
like that in
so. What's balling though is does that mean he gets 1,000 yards?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the compensatory, the stats don't matter, right? It would be if he balls out to the point to where somebody's going to pay him another contract. That contract would equate to them getting a pick right back.
I appreciate. I just didn't know what our definition and my definition are different definitions.
True.
So I just want to make sure.
I get it. I have a guy that might ball out, Steve.
Who?
This episode of 89 is brought to you by Row. Listen up, people. It's spring, right? Everything is in bloom. So let's talk a little birds and bees, because everybody's a little frisky in the spring. And Row Sparks, well, they have you covered. If you're looking for a little boost, a little more fun for you and your partner, well, Row has it taken care of. Now, I'm no doctor, but you put it under your tongue, it dissolves, it lasts for up to 36 hours, so you can go back to back to back to back if you'd like. Now, Row connects you with a medical provider 100% online, so there's no awkward face-to-face interaction. And, if you're approved, shipped directly to your door. So if prescribed, new sexual health patients will get $15 off Sparks on a reoccurring plan. So connect with the provider at row.co/89 to find out if a prescription for Row Sparks is for you. Be ready to play with Row Sparks. I have a guy that might ball out, Steve.
Who?
How about Christian Kirk?
Oh!
This was going to be a straight-up release, and then strangely, what never happens, well, not never say never, because it did happen, but it happens very seldom, a trade within the division. And the Jaguars end up trading Christian Kirk for a 7th-round pick in 2026, and he ends up going to the Houston Texans, who obviously had too many receivers a season ago and have no receivers now to go with Nico Collins. I was talking to somebody in Houston and they were like, by the way, I've got a lot of calls about this Christian Kirk trade. And it seems to be one a lot of people around the league are going to go, you really are going to like this guy and you're going to like him in your offense. What's your take on Christian Kirk?
I love Christian Kirk. He's a dynamic football player. What he automatically does is he puts Stephon Diggs, he puts him on the free market. And that's going to be tough for him, being a guy that's been injured, getting put on the market. So now teams are that gives a team an excuse to take away your value. That's the name of the game, right? This is a wholesale look, and Your job is to buy the best product at the least amount of money possible. And that's what teams are going to be looking at as Stephon Diggs. But Christian Kirk adds an element, but that also tells me that they need that Tank Dell type of impact. A guy who could play in the slot, who can get active, because they have Nico going to the third level. And here you got Christian Kirk. He's going to be able to work the intermediate routes. And then that also, if they can improve their offensive line, that also allows Dalton Schultz to get back active in the passing game, since he was stuck, help chipping and assisting that struggling offensive line. I like the Christian Kirk pick. I think that in itself is going to turn out to be also another 7th round pick that will move up, because he's going to play really, really good. He's a crafty, good route runner, the ability to separate. I think he has reliable hands. He gets away. He's not stiff, creates free access. There's just a number of boxes that he checks when you talk about a wide receiver that you can tell when he wasn't on the field for the Jacksonville Jaguars when he was on the field. They were a completely different offense. When Christian Kirk went down, I believe it gave the Jacksonville Jaguars an opportunity to really evaluate Calvin Ridley, which led Calvin to being allowed to test free agency, because what Christian was doing in the offense and what Calvin Ridley could not do in this offense really has created some doubt. And I would tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe next year Calvin Ridley is moving on out of Tennessee, because he's not the route runner that you think he is. He can run if you give him room. If you press up and you get him in that phone booth, he cannot create free access. He doesn't get open as much as you would like compared to what you expect. And so that's one of the things that Christian Kirk was able to do. Now, why? And so somebody would say, as I'm speaking to myself as I'm saying it, well, Steve, if he was such a good player, why are the Jacksonville Jaguars getting rid of him? Because they have a new offensive coordinator. And that offensive coordinator looks at the players differently. When you look at how and why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was successful, Chris Godwin, speed. Then you have the savviness, big box, big body for Mike Evans. They have that big body and speed in one. His name is Brian Thomas Jr. They just are going to switch things up. Their philosophy is going to change. The type of players that they want are going to change. And also, too, Christian Kirk was a big acquisition in his cap number. So that tells me that they're going to look at something in the draft to partner with Brian Thomas Jr. at a reduced rate that'll be able to give them some opportunity to maybe solidify that secondary that has been struggling over the last couple of years, in which they thought would be extremely better.
What you said about Christian Kirk was spot on. I remember having that conversation with Doug Peterson 2 years ago when he went down and the offense fell apart. He's like, our offense revolves around Christian Kirk. He's the one who makes it go. That's the importance he had to that Jaguars offense, and obviously he's going to have a major role getting the football from C.J. Stroud. The other part that blows my mind now here, Steven, and the running mate and their number one that he has alongside him now, and Nico Collins, and as talented as Nico is, do you know we're talking about DK getting 33 a year, and what is T. Higgins going to get, and Jamar's going to be over 40. They locked up Nico Collins for 3 years at 24 a year. Like, that is going to be a bargain this upcoming year and next year, and they're still going to be able to do some other things. I mean, I just wanted to mention that contract.
If he balls out,
yeah. Well, he just signed it this past year, so I mean, he's got to wait a year.
I didn't say he can't try, but I'm just telling you what's going to happen.
Of course, they're going to pay him even more, but it's smart to do contracts early. I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
Steve, how about somebody staying with their team? You just hinted at them in Chris Godwin. This guy was the cream of the crop in free agency. When I talked to teams, it was Chris Godwin, a gap. Then the rest of the receiver group in terms of free agency, mainly because of age, because of production, most of the guys on the other side of 30, and mainly because also of all the boxes that Chris Godwin checks. And man, did Mike Vrabel want him to come to New England. And they were going to pay him a lot more, and I mean a lot more, than what he stayed in Tampa Bay and took. And I get why Mike Vrabel trying to build a new culture wanted Chris Godwin. It's because of the person he is off the field, right? The teammate that he is, the boxes that he checks off the field in terms of your locker room. He played with Brady, who Vrabel's close with, but then on the field, it's the yak monster, the physicalness, the ability to play inside and out, all of those things. But Jason Light gets to retain him, and he continues to play with Baker Mayfield, continues to play with Mike Evans. Is this maybe, we always talk about free agency, Davante landed here, and Christian Kirk got traded here, and DK gets traded here. Him staying put, is that the biggest move at the free agent, biggest move at the wide receiver spot? Is Chris Godwin staying in Tampa?
You know, I haven't had the opportunity to speak with him, but I can, just as you were talking about things, I was thinking, okay, what is the advantage or disadvantage of taking less money from what a team is offering you? Well, let's just be honest, right? So let's go down the list. You could play at Tampa Bay and be familiar with your offense, keeping the same offense, be familiar with your quarterback. But then when I go, okay, New England, what has happened with Chris Godwin over the last couple of years? Knee, right?
Ankle. Yep. It was the
ankle
knee, it
and
was
knee.
the MCL and the MCL and the ACL, and then this was the dislocated ankle.
Yes. What does Tampa Bay play on?
Grass.
It's nice weather.
I've stood on that. Listen, I've stood on that turf up in New England doing live shots for 6 hours and my back hurts on that turf. It's terrible.
Right. And so if you have lower extremity, you have lower extremity injuries, and it gets cold up there. Mm-hmm. So let me get this right. More money for cold and bad surface, and the possibility of cutting my career shorter, or letting some of that fluid or mobility starting to stiffen up. You know what? We talking about 66 or 76? I'm going to New England, which is Massachusetts, where their taxes are a little bit higher than Florida because Florida is zero taxes. And then going from the NFC to the AFC. Man, there's a lot of things going on there that I can see as you go down the list and you go, these are the things that I'm looking at. There's a lot more minuses than pluses for Chris Godwin, especially playing with a younger quarterback. He got to prove himself. He got to show him what he's doing. A new head coach, new head coach who wants me to be physical. But you got to learn what that culture is going to be. And when you're a little bit older, you're like, man, I'm not trying to do all this proving it thing. No, man. Holla at your boy when training camp is over, okay?
I love hanging out with
Mike. Because let's
Mike.
get ready for the season.
Mike and I got a good thing going here. We're benefiting big time. I get it. I get it.
Those are the things that I was thinking about.
I love the turf
why.
thing. I love the elongating your career. I think that's a great point. That's really, really big. I think there's also this point, if people are curious about Chris's health, if the team wants to bring you back as bad as Jason Light wanted to bring back Chris Godwin, who knows your recovery better than the team that you're with and probably where you're rehabbing.
And you're familiar.
That you're familiar with.
You're familiar with them. They're not going to poke and prod and say, hey, let's try this. Because that's one of the things that's tough. If you go to a new team with a new training staff, a new philosophy, and they go in there and say, hey, let's try this. You're like, try this. Man, we're not trying nothing on me.
No, yeah. If he stays in Tampa, he's like, no. Did you guys all saw the way I came back from the ACL? Yeah. Let's do that again with this ankle. Yeah. Like that was a good process. We're gonna come back again. And I love him as a player. We have if you can find it on the channel, by the way, we have a great breakdown from early in the season of Chris Godwin when you and I were talking about, the yak and everything he was doing. If you remember, when he went down in week 7, Steve, he was leading the NFL in catches with 50 through 7. He was second in the NFL in yards, only behind Jamar Chase, who won the Triple Crown. And he was one off leading the NFL in touchdowns. When he went down, he was having a monster season and probably wants to go back and do that again. We got one last receiver here, and that's T. Higgins. As of right now, he is tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals. They would like to get a long-term contract done. I don't know why that got was so you good, but it was timed so perfectly. I think it was so quick, and now he's looking for that long-term deal because they can't really have him play on this number. And they're trying to get the Jamar Chase deal done as well. The thinking I'm hearing from asking around is this: they believe that this offense is, I don't want to say unstoppable, but they believe defenses will have a very, very difficult time stopping them as they brought back Mike Gesicki, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins with Joe Burrow. It's almost like we know our deficiencies on defense, but if we bring all of these guys back, I'm not sure who stops all of us.
They tried that last year. How'd it work out for them?
Well, I think they lost all their games in September, and it was just uphill sledding for the rest of the way. I think you're right. Listen, I get what you're saying. I'm saying this is their thing. Don't make an excuse
on how it looked. It still was a doo-doo burger, right?
It was. And he battled through some injuries.
Whether it was the beginning or the end, it was still didn't work.
Yeah. No, I know. He was hurt for stretches. I will say this: he's never played more than I think 50% of the snaps for a season.
His rookie year only.
Only one? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And so, what's your take on him staying there? It doesn't sound like you think this is going to push them over the edge as a team. I think this is the best fit for T. I do think T's value is greater playing alongside Jamar Chase and with Joe Burrow than it would be becoming a one somewhere else.
This is going to hurt T. Higgins' feelings and all the fans of T. Higgins because it's going to sound like, they always say I'm a hater. So, T. Higgins is Robin. He's not a Batman. And there's nothing wrong with that. T. Higgins.
Robin's still a superhero, kind of.
Yeah. Depending on who you ask. If you're asking old school Eartha Kitt, you know what I'm saying, with Adam West, yeah. But
going against Bridges Meredith. Wow, we're pulling the old names out here. Okay.
When I look at T. Higgins, the thing that he reminds me of is Jamar Chase is Eric Moles. T. Higgins is Peerless Price. Remember back in the day with the Buffalo Bills? Mm-hmm. And Peerless Price got paid, went to the Atlanta Falcons. And Peerless Price went on a milk carton, and you couldn't find him. I'm afraid if T. Higgins is reading his own press clippings too much, that he's going to end up going to a team that system may not benefit him. They may not know how to play him in the right position. And you could be chasing a bag and never get fully paid because you start to fall off so quickly, so fast that the team gets ready. So I'm just worried that he could end up just kind of putting himself in a bad position.
Yeah, I will say this, asking around, I would say, Steve, it's split, and it's probably, I would say, everybody's opinion skewed one way or another for one reason or another. And I would say when I asked around, it was split on he's a 2 or he's a 1. It was not the majority believe he is a 1.
So that, you know what that says then? You ain't a 1.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the part that it's really tough situation to hear, that you're not the 1. You're a 2 who's benefited by playing next to the Triple Crown winner. Now, you can play football. He's a heck of a football player.
I think so too, yeah. I don't think anybody doubts he's a bad football player. That's the other part.
I don't either. I just want to make sure I say that because, people say I say things that I never said. I think he's a heck of a football player. But I don't think you can't say T. Higgins makes Jamar Chase. I think Jamar Chase impacts T. Higgins, and T. Higgins benefits from playing alongside Jamar Chase more than Jamar Chase benefits playing alongside T. Higgins.
Perfect. Now I'll close it up. I think that's exactly right, and I think that's why they're trying to get this deal done and why they're willing to pay. Why he changed agents and now he's rep by the same representation as Jamar Chase. I think that makes getting the deals done a little bit easier.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit more. It makes it a little bit easier.
Right.
But here's what I did hear, and this is what makes me think about it.
I don't know this.
This allegedly, I heard that T. Higgins wanted a number of guarantee, but that number that he was looking to be guaranteed was significantly lower than the actual number that he's been available through his career. When I look at that, the scale of justice, and I'm not going to say what that number is, but I'm going to just say you can't ask for a number that you haven't been available or played that amount of snaps percentages-wise and ask for that number. I think that's an oxymoron.
I get it. And we also have to remember the organization he's doing business with. And the Bengals do business different than a lot of other teams in terms of guarantees, past the first year. They just do things a little bit differently. But I will say this. I think you are right that his value is probably greater being a part of this group than it is somewhere else. Does that make sense? He'll almost be a better player in the role with the group he's with, and I think Cincinnati understands that, and that's why they want to get a deal done.
Like
we'll see what ends up.
You're not going to like that. James Palmer said that.
Just saying.
I just heard it.